Welcome, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. We all heard it. China recently announced new limits on key battery materials, a move shaking up global supply chains already. For Europe, there is a big question how to stay independent and build real circular strength. To dig into that, I'm here with Felix Wagner from Circunomics and Nils Steinbrecher from Cylib, two people working hands-on at the intersection of battery data and recycling. Let's jump in. To provide more context, Felix, what exactly changed with China's latest export controls? Why does it matter so much for Europe?
Yeah, well, great question. And also thanks from my side for everyone for tuning in. So, well, as we all know, China is really leading the development of batteries. And obviously, that's what we can expect from that new regulation. They are trying to protect that market advantage that they have, because they simply currently build the best performing batteries out there. Not just the batteries itself, they also control the minerals that you need to build these great batteries. And last but not least, they are also building the best machinery to build up the battery manufacturing plants. So they want to control what batteries, specifically all batteries with a larger energy density than 300 watt-hours per kilogram. So everything above that needs a special export license. Otherwise, you can't get these batteries out of China, for example, to be shipped to Germany or Europe. The same with cathode active material and also with anode active material, plus, last but not least, the machinery that you need to build those batteries at the end, also here in Europe. So they are really tackling all of the areas where they are leading at the moment, and they really want to be in control and stay in control here. It's pretty challenging for us if we want to become independent, right? But I think that's also where Nils, especially on the material side, can say a little bit more about why this is so challenging for us, or can become challenging for us.
Let's move to the recycler's point of view. So how do these restrictions show up in your world?
Yeah, I mean, the topic, first of all, is a big one, right? And it's just starting to materialize. And for me, at the end of the day, the question is who calls the shots on the automotive industry. And the part is, and we grew up like that here in Germany, that the Germans are the ones, the Europeans are the ones who call the shots on the automotive industry. I think the difficult part is that this is changing, and we have kind of maybe ignored it a little bit. But the sovereignty of Europe, right, on the automotive industry is at risk here. And if we are not changing something, we will not call any shot anymore in that industry. So obviously from a recycler, it can be many things, right? The worst case is that the whole EV market in Europe kind of slows down further, collapses further. The battery supply chain is not building up in Europe. And obviously then recyclers have not so much to do here, right? If the industry is not in Europe. On the best cases, the market is still there, right? The Chinese are still supporting in a way to grow the market, because also they want to make business. They'll sell their automotive cars here, and potentially the materials get more expensive. And for a recycler, the question is, what is the price of the materials? Right? If the lithium and graphite and cobalt and nickel prices are very low, the business case for recyclers is not so good, or is more difficult, I would say. But if the prices are high, actually that can be a positive side for the recyclers. Nevertheless, as long as the battery supply chain is not building up successfully in Europe, even the prices don't matter, because we don't have anyone to sell it to. So we are still in that finding phase, I think. Where does it lead us to? What does it mean? And Felix mentioned it. I mean, we also are dependent on equipment from China as a recycler, right? So what equipment we will get and what we will not get. So I think we are really at a challenging junction right now in Europe, yeah, we grow up in a globalization where everyone is doing what he can do best, and now we go back to middle age a little bit, right? Everyone has to look what they can do on their own to survive. So it's a very challenging time.
Yeah, you already touched a couple of things and aspects already, but if you want to kind of sum it up and say what are the biggest weak spots that keep Europe from closing this loop, what would you say that would be, looking at the current position?
Well, I think the biggest weak spot is that it doesn't matter where we want to become like a relevant region in the world for the battery industry. The problem is it doesn't really matter in where to start. It's all dominated by China right now. We really were so late to that entire game that China has like 5, 6, 7 years of time advantage at this point, because obviously they see that Europe, the US are trying to pick up in speed and catch up. So I think that it's not just one thing where Europe is behind. It's actually the entire ecosystem. As Nils said, yeah, if there's no supply for them, called like end-of-life batteries, what's the business case at the end of the day, yeah, for a recycler? That's what we see, at least at the moment. I mean, we are also a trading hub at Circunomics. We see a lot of feedstock, production scrap, and end-of-life batteries definitely going east. So it's a problem that we have in Europe, but at least that's one hope, because we don't just or shouldn't talk about what's the problem. Maybe also one good thing is that we at least have the battery regulation helping there to raise the bar, put in export controls also from our side, that we don't get these materials flowing back to China. This is becoming more and more strict. I think we will also touch some other points later in the discussion.
That was exactly my next question for you. There has to be something also positive or different perspective that we can give. How can Europe tighten the loop practically in the next 2 years?
Maybe start from another side. We both have children, right, Felix? I know. I remember when your first child came. I have 3, and hopefully I will be a grandfather at some point. And Europe needs to be there, right? Europe needs to be a strong region to have jobs and to have a future. So and that calls on sovereignty, right? And not only on industries, but also on the defense side. When we look at the situation now in Europe and the world, Europe also needs to be able to defend themselves. And if we look at how wars are done today, you just look at Ukraine and Russia, it's mainly drones. And we have been embarrassed in Europe lately by not being really in the way dealing with that. But it's not only protecting ourselves, it's also what about our own drones? What about our own batteries? So the defense sector comes in very strongly, and that's why Felix mentioned it's not only the battery regulation, it's also the Critical Raw Materials Act by the European Union, who really is there to make sure that we have at least the material who are in Europe recycled and usable. So our materials from a recycling industry are not only wanted in the battery industry, they are also wanted in defense and other industries. So this gives even more pressure to Europe to be sovereign, to keep materials here. And that is a big challenge, right? Because we also still need to say that as a challenge. And the worst is that we just export our waste, which we do now. So majority of battery waste goes outside of Europe and buy expensive materials, and this is controlled by others. So we need to do more to be a strong a European continent. And I think one thing which really would help, and they're starting to do that, is reducing bureaucracy. I mean, it's good to have sustainability in Europe, and that also protects us in a way. But if you want to ship a battery from Malta and there's just one battery to Denmark, and you have to cross 4 borders and do 4 notifications and wait half a year or longer to get this done, and you have to sign it in black ink and blue ink. So that brings us to digitalization, which is an opportunity. From a recycling perspective, we need much smoother digital ways to ship batteries around, to deal with batteries, to deal with battery waste, and not only battery waste, but also the products coming out of the battery, right? First it's the black mass, and after the black mass is a certain mixtures like MHP or sulfates, right? So different products come out, and to have them shipped, to have them properly registered in waste compliance and packaging compliance, etc., are just one example where we could do much more to be competitive versus China and the US, which are just one country, right? Sometimes I think we have already the Rolls-Royce of legislation done, but we have not even built a small trolley. So in that specific battery industry. But let us build first the industry, and then we can still tighten the regulation around it.
I think you touched a very important point that also is kind of the core of the mission of Circunomics, digitization of processes, right? And so, I mean, where it all starts is we need way more transparency along the whole value chain, and that's where the Battery Passport comes into play. And I think this will already help all the players along the value chain to reduce processes, reduce process costs, and make them more efficient. And that's at the end also one of the reasons why we worked on a technical solution for such a battery passport in the last 2.5 years, which we are now happy to offer as a service to anyone who brings batteries to the market. It's also kind of mindset, which is not digital, and but I think we need to also, as Europe, really understand that we really have to do something here, because and I mean really not just from the industry, but also from politicians, and every single one working in that industry should really understand that the time is now to act and to do something. Especially in the automotive industry, we have been from an engineering perspective simply the best in the world, but that changed quickly. And so we now need to act and simply do better, do faster, do it with less regulation, so that we can really compete, because they are not waiting for us. We need to collaborate, because circular economy is about collaboration, right? It's not one player who can solve all the issues along the value chain. We all need to work together.
It's a wake-up call. And Felix also mentioned that it's really a wake-up call for Europe. And to see it positive, I think it's better earlier to have the wake-up call than too late. We were first hit by the Russian-Ukraine war, when we lost a big supply chain there. We lost energy supply chain even. Now we have challenges with taxes from the US. We have to be faster, at least on digitalization. No one can stop us. It's only us probably complaining about data protection, right? Who stops us from being faster in digitalization. But there's no time to wait now. A good example is Felix company in the end, which is really a digitalized company and working in many areas, including digital battery passport. And that should have been the status for long. And yeah, it will still take time to implement it. I think 27 now, so not too long from now. But yeah, what do we see in the industry? We see an automotive summit, right, in the German government, and other things to turn the wheel back, turn the time back, and not see moving faster and moving forward. And that's, I think, one of the biggest risks. And that's why I think we, as the industry ourselves, have to do our part to provide the tools.
We're going to try to wrap up our conversation for today, and looking ahead, as you already pointed out, some things to focus on, but battery passport deadlines, EPR enforcement, what should OEMs or policymakers focus on right now to try to maybe address them directly?
I would even say they don't have to do that much. They should enforce the laws that we have. That should be number one, because I think we have, at least from my point of view, and for our specific area, it might be different for recycling. You can comment on that, Nils. But I think we don't need more regulation. Yeah, I mean, we also operate in other markets that have way less regulation, like the US. And still, I mean, we just returned from the battery show, and I can tell you 50% of the conversations we had were about a battery passport. But no one in the US, no government is asking for a battery passport. So it seems like the industry is still interested in it, even though they are not forced to do it, because they understand, well, we need to get more transparency in the value chain, because this helps us getting more independent from other nations, because we can control the battery flow, we can keep the batteries inside the country. So I think it's not that we should wait for the politicians to tell us how to do it and how the market should work out. That's why I'm saying the industry players should work together and collaborate, because we know it better, to be honest, as the politicians. And we can do it quicker than just waiting for them to tell us how to do it.
Yeah, maybe two comments. One is on the regulation. I agree in general we have enough regulation and sometimes too much, right? And that is not really helping the digitalization or working against bureaucracy. But on the other hand, we need to have a circular economy here in Europe. And I mentioned the Critical Raw Materials Act. And there's a strong discussion ongoing. I think that will be enforced now by this Chinese announcements is the local content. So that more and more requirement will be that products who are produced here need to have local content. And what does it mean in batteries? It means that a new battery, which in the future anyhow needs recycled content from old batteries, cannot use that recycled content from China or elsewhere in the world. They would need to have some part at least used from Europe. So in some areas, I think we can support still the industry with some regulation. And I think that will just be a stronger argument now after the China announcement. Some people say we cannot catch up, but we have to find our own way. Whether it's a niche way, whether it's the future batteries, maybe it's the future cars. And that, what does it mean? The question was, what can OEMs do? What can, I mean, it's partnerships. Building, I was just this morning talking to someone, a new startup, which is very small, challenging to collect money. They want to do graphite from CO2. I mean, we all know we don't want CO2 in the atmosphere, and we need graphite, which we don't want to import from China. So there are opportunities out there, and there are great ideas out there, and I think we have to be more agile to support them and build our own niche, our own industry, and be a strong player again in Europe. Otherwise, we will just follow for a long time, which will be a big challenge for everyone.
Having that said, we'll wrap up today's great discussion. Thanks, Felix and Nils, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.